Welcome to Season 2 of the Analytics Experience. Today we have Chris Dutton, Founder and Chief Product Officer of Maven Analytics, and Bruno Carrera.
It's nice. Welcome to Season 2, Chris. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, guys. Pleasure to be here.
So, just that we have some context on you, Chris, why don't you talk to us a bit about yourself? Like your personal journey, everything related to data.
Yes, sounds good. So a little bit about me, just kind of quick bio, and then I'll talk a little bit about my journey into data analytics personally. So Chris Dutton, founder and head of product at Maven Analytics. We're an online learning platform really tailor-made for aspiring data professionals. And talking a little bit about my path into data analytics, I think it's worth noting that my career actually went in a very different direction. And if we go all the way back to my college years, I think like most people, as a freshman in college, I went to school outside of Boston. I really had no idea what my professional life would look like outside of school. And I was kind of torn, to be honest, because I wanted to work in a creative kind of field. I loved multimedia art. I loved graphic design. I loved photography. But at the same time, I wanted something a little bit more practical, a little bit more business minded as well. So by the time sophomore year rolled around, when I had to declare my field of study, I ended up dual majoring in economics and multimedia art, which kind of seems like a strange combination to most people. It's like those two very different ends of the spectrum in terms of the left brain, right brain thinking. But in hindsight, I didn't realize this at the time, but looking back, that actually served me very, very well and prepared me very well for a career in analytics. And if you follow me or if you follow Maven Analytics on social media, you'll hear us talking a lot about the soft skills, right? The ability to communicate, the creative skills, data visualization, and storytelling. And I think studying two very different paths that really forced me to flex both that left brain and right brain type of thinking, again, I think prepared me really well. But what was interesting was in college, I really wasn't a big fan of the economics courses I was taking. I took microeconomics, macroeconomics, econometrics,
econometrics.
Yeah, econometrics is one of the hardest classes.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like data science with a different name to it, right? And it just like nothing was really resonating. Like I was doing very well. I was like really academically minded, but it's just like I wasn't feeling the passion for it. And I think because it was a lot of kind of theoretical stuff, like a lot of proofs, a lot of equations, talking about supply and demand and price elasticity and the profit margin on widgets. Like I don't care about that stuff. And the moment where it all changed for me was my junior year when I took a course called sabermetrics. Do you guys know what sabermetrics is by any chance?
I've heard about it, but I have no clue.
To be honest, I have no clue what that class is about.
It does sound really cool, though.
It is. So sabermetrics,
I'll give you that one.
It's the statistical analysis of baseball. And it's really popular course on campus. And I am like a huge baseball fan, like grew up in a baseball family, played basically my whole life. I spent summers at Fenway Park. I actually almost worked at Fenway Park after graduating. I interned for a minor league team with the Red Sox, doing PR and graphic design.
That's awesome.
And that course, that was the first time where I was able to apply these tools and these techniques that I was learning to something that I was actually passionate about. And I could see the application of what I was learning. And that was like a light bulb went off for me. And I was like, oh my God, I can actually use these tools and these regression models and these formulas and functions I'm learning and extract this insight out of the data itself and use it in really fascinating ways. So after taking that class, I actually co-founded a group on campus. It was called Baseball Analysis at Tufts. This extracurricular group, BAT or BAT. I told you I'm the creative type, right? And what we would do is we would pose these really interesting questions about baseball, and we'd use these statistical techniques to try to solve them. And the group got really popular. In fact, one of the projects that I helped lead got a lot of publicity. It got published in a bunch of pretty popular baseball papers and articles. And it was an interesting project. It was actually trying to quantify the impact of luck on a hitter's performance for a given season, and then using that to predict whether they would improve or regress the following year. So it was a really fun project. It got a lot of publicity, and that was, again, one of those first moments where it just brought these skills to life and made me realize that, there could be a career path in analytics for me.
Chris, what's really good? This is a big coincidence, but after season 1, our last episode of season 1 was Professor Holm, the data architect
from the Red Sox. That's right.
It's huge that you mentioned this,
yeah.
Because at Florida now we always have this conversation that back in school, back in Suffolk, that we graduate, is a class called sports analytics.
Mm-hmm.
And the professor, the professor of that class, he always tells the same thing you just mentioned. Like how all these statistical terminologies make sense when it's in a topic that you really enjoy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I wanted to add, I don't know if you think about this, but just based on the story that you've told us, you're exactly like our target. Like our niche is literally people like you who go through college in their first years. You're trying so many different things because, again, the first year of college, if you don't know like exactly what you want to do, you're just taking genetics. And second year is most of that. But I feel like for people like us, there's always that point that makes things click, as you just said. And I found that really interesting, to be honest, especially because sports analytics is such an interesting topic.
Yeah, and I can also add to what Alfredo mentioned that I was a finance major before, and I decided to change then to big data. And I met Alfredo because we were part of the club, like you mentioned. We were part of the business analytics club back in Suffolk University.
There you go.
We didn't know like projects like you do, but we basically tried to teach people about the balance of the soft skills and the technical skills about data.
You're speaking my language. I love it. That's a great story.
And based on what you say, that's so interesting because now it's crazy to see how you started on like getting an interest on sports analytics, and now you're helping people launch their careers in data. Like,
that's right.
May I ask you, how did you actually launch your own career? What was the first step? Because you told us the whole background and context industry, but what was it that like the roadmap you had for yourself to like go through the motions and like get to where you are?
I feel like calling it a roadmap would be giving myself too much credit at that point. I think I was thinking pretty short term at the time, like survive college, do well, land a job that would make mom and dad proud. And so like senior year, at that point, by senior year, I knew I wanted to work in data. And I think I knew I didn't want to be like a management consultant. I didn't want to be in finance. I wanted like a data job or an analytics job in a cool place. And so I found a company called Digitas. It's an ad agency in downtown Boston that has a really highly respected strategy and analytics group. And so I applied there. I actually printed out and brought that baseball analysis that I had done as kind of a showcase piece during my interview. And like that helped get me the job, which was kind of a cool experience. This was like before project portfolios were really even a thing. And so I landed that job. It was a marketing analyst in the S&A strategy and analysis group for the ad agency. And it was just such a great place to start a career because it was a large team. I had like 80 analysts around me, a lot of mentors, people to learn from. And it was just a really cool creative vibe too, which is what I was going for. So that was my first real analytics gig. And I spent about 6 years there.
That's crazy.
That's awesome.
And it's interesting. You mentioned that you spent there 6 years. Like, how is it? What are you doing those years exactly that would you say that give you that progression that you needed?
So good question. Let me start with day one because my introduction to Digitas, my first 2 weeks there were insane. When I stepped into that office, I thought I knew Excel really well. And I think this is a common bias we hear a lot where like everyone is like a 9 or a 10 in Excel, and then they realize they're grossly overestimating their skills.
Agreed.
That was me too, to be honest. I've been there. So the real like cold hard reality for me was day one on the job. I am lucky enough to be working side by side with this really bright, really sharp senior analyst who had built these unbelievable executive dashboards and reports for a bunch of clients with the agency. And they were like the most insanely sophisticated Excel sheets I'd ever seen. Like, they were dynamic, they were interactive, they were automated, there were VBA macros, crazy. Like, again, it just blew me away. And I was like equal parts excited and terrified because I had no idea how these things were built. And then I think it was on day 2, he drops the bombshell that he's off to business school and I've got 2 weeks to learn from him, and then he's out the door. So those first 2 weeks, I was putting in long hours, late nights, trying to like decipher and reverse engineer these reports to understand how they were built. And it was exhausting and it was terrible, but it was awesome at the same time because I learned so much in such a short period of time. And it just like opened my eyes to how ridiculously powerful a seemingly simple tool like Excel actually could be. And that was another big moment in my life where it like just sparked this like newfound passion and love for analytics and this hunger to go deeper. So that was big. And then over the course of the next like year or two, I just kept digging deeper and deeper and building my skills to the point where like I had developed the reputation as the Excel guy in the office. So like my cubicle became like the informal Excel help desk. And anyone who had questions or like really thorny problems they had to solve, they would come to me, and I like cherished it because, you know, it was cool. It was a chance to help people work smarter, get more efficient, automate big parts of their job, solve problems. You know, it made me like a popular guy on the team, which was great. And yeah, and I was like learning with every new problem I was encountering, I was learning a little bit more and a little bit more. And I think most importantly, building that reputation as like a specialist and someone who was really technically proficient, that opened the door for a big opportunity for me, which was to develop and lead the Excel training for the entire department and for all of the incoming analysts, which was scary because that was a big step outside of the comfort zone. And I had never taught up to that point. I hated public speaking. I hated presenting. So initially I was like, oh, I don't want to stand in front of a room and have to like teach people like a professor. Yeah, go ahead.
I have 2 questions, but I'm going to ask first this one.
Sure.
Further and I, we always mention that to start like developing your skills, Excel is a good spot like to start.
It doesn't get enough credit, in my opinion. It's such a big tool, and it's so.
You know, that's the reason I love the fact that Chris mentioned that, because he emphasized like how many years you spent actually developing those skills in Excel. Like,
yes,
for one tool, if you think about it, because nowadays I feel like everyone's crazy off. Oh, I want to get into big data and data science and all these buzzwords, and you're like, all right, I need to learn like 20 different programming languages. I need to become a master in every single one of them just to have like a possibility of an internship. But once you get into the industry, you do realize that.
Yeah, like for example, SQL, Python, R, like all these other tools, but just becoming really good in Excel, all the opportunities that were for you afterwards. And my second question actually is like, that was your first experience actually teaching people about some data skills? That was the first time you were exposed to that?
In a formal way, yeah, it was.
Wow.
That's super interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and honestly, we could spend a whole episode talking on why Excel is the gateway to analytics and data science. And I won't go too deep there, but what I will say is that it's an unbelievably powerful tool for learning the foundations of really complex analytics. It's how I learned the basis of programming. It's how I learned the language of formulas and functions. It's how I learned data visualization. It's how I learned relational data modeling. It's just unbelievable. It's a ridiculously sophisticated software disguised as a simple spreadsheet. And I think that's why so many people fall into this Dunning-Kruger bias of not knowing what they don't know and overestimating their abilities.
Absolutely. And may I add to that? What's crazy is obviously you have way more professional experience combined than we do. Like I have like 3 years and a half on data science in general. And it's crazy to see that how many companies do actually rely on Excel so much, but they don't exploit it. They would use it as a spreadsheet tool, as you were saying it. Yeah. And then you start talking to them about VBA, macros, and like, responsive visualizations and like command centers for dashboards. And that blows your mind.
Oh yeah.
People never get to like fully exploit it. So it's really cool that you commented on that.
Well, and not to jump ahead, but that's a big reason why when Maven Analytics started to form, we chose to deliberately focus on core data analytics and business intelligence skills and not try to be another AI, ML data science platform, because I spent years as an analytics consultant after that job at Digitas, and I saw firsthand working with Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies who were completely lacking in these critical foundational analytics skills. But we're talking about like what machine learning models can we be building? What AI technology can we be rolling out? And it's like, guys, you aren't even doing reporting well yet. Like you don't have like a data warehouse. You don't have proper data models. There's so much opportunity there. I'd argue that the opportunity is actually bigger than the hotter topics that you hear about these days, just because people are trying to leapfrog the foundations, and we're trying to really help them build that deep fundamental skill set.
Absolutely.
Okay, and now that you mentioned that's the difference that Maven Analytics is, now is the question like when Maven Analytics was born, and where are the top reasons the fact that was run? Now that you mentioned the observations you make that in the industry was lacking of all these data skills and data foundations. When you realize upon that you have the knowledge actually to create a platform that could be useful to everyone that want to learn about the topic.
Let me clarify. I had some of the knowledge, and I hired people who had the rest of the knowledge to form a really, really good team. So good question. So I like I said, I spent about 6 years at Digitas. I was teaching these classes, realized that like teaching in many ways was my flow state. Kind of surprisingly to me, it was when I felt like I was just like totally in the zone doing something that I was uniquely qualified to do. And I just fell in love with it. And for me, I think it was the challenge of distilling complex information in a very simple way, and then seeing the light bulb moment when people understand a topic and realize how it's going to change their world. Like that gave me the passion to teach, and it made me realize I wanted to make teaching part of my life from that point on. So when I left Digitas, first thing I did was went to New Zealand for a month and didn't think about work or business or data or emails or anything, which was amazing. I would say if you ever get a chance to take a career break like that, and or go to New Zealand, do both, because it was really awesome. Then I came back and I was like, all right, time to buckle back in and figure out the next phase of my career. So I decided I was going to do my own analytics consulting work and teach courses on the side. So this is around 2015 at this point. It's still kind of early days of online learning. It's like a thing, but it's not super popular yet. Like Udemy's around, lynda.com's around. And I knew I wanted to try it. I knew I wanted to teach my Excel formulas course as like my first one, but I had no idea what I was doing. Like I had this janky old laptop that sounded like an airplane taking off every time I opened it up. Like I I bought this microphone that was like definitely the wrong kind of microphone for recording. And the best part was to get the acoustics right, because I was recording in my apartment in Boston. I literally pulled up a stool on one side of me, a lamp on the other, and I would drape this heavy brown fleece blanket over me, and I would record in this like dark, hot cave just to avoid like the echoes and the acoustics and stuff. So it was
some interviews, man. What part of Boston were you living? Because we live in like Beacon Hill, and it's kind of nice, but it's still very, very noisy.
At that point, I was in Alston, across from the Super 88, right off of Blanchard Corner. So you had like the T running by all the time. Like my building was basically like a dorm room for BU. So it was as far from like a proper recording studio as you can imagine. Hence the whole like dark blanket cave that I was recording in. So I gave it everything I had. I invested probably 400 or 500 hours into building like a pretty solid course with no expectations, right? It was like, if this course earns like some beer money, that's pretty cool. If it makes me like a couple $100, like that's nice. Maybe someday, like maybe it could pay the mortgage. Like that would be really cool. But again, I set the expectations low. I wanted to just like give it a shot, put my work out there, and try it. And it started doing well, like accumulating royalties enough to justify teaching a second course, which was Excel charts and graphs, then a third course, which was pivot tables. And at the same time, I'm doing like almost full-time consulting. And a little bit of a side note, but one of my main gigs was with this digital agency called Results Digital. And it was run by a guy named Jason Russo, who, if we fast forward 4 years, he was my first hire as Maven Analytics CEO. My second hire also came from Results Digital. My third hire was a guy I knew from Digitas. So like, moral of the story, like, networking really matters. Like, absolutely. Meet good people, like be good to people, and like it'll pay you back in return. So anyway, at this point, like course royalties were really starting to build up to the point where they actually matched and then surpassed my full-time consulting income. And I was like, okay, like this is eye-opening. Like we've got an opportunity here. And that was the first point where I paused and I was like, clearly there's a product market fit here. And clearly there's an opportunity that's untapped and that's bigger than just me. So that point, timing was good because I was like just about out of ideas that I could teach based on my knowledge. So my first step was like, find instructors who could help teach complementary skills, in data prep, data visualization, data analysis. So I found Aaron Perry, who's a Power BI expert, hired John Poller, who teaches SQL for us. And then from there, I found an amazing Tableau instructor, Python instructor, data science, machine learning instructors. And that first step was really just like building the instructor roster of just incredibly talented, high quality instructors to expand the breadth of our content.
And a roster of a baseball team, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like only A players, like total focus and commitment to quality over quantity. Like since day one, it's been a huge principle of the business. And when I think about the evolution of Maven Analytics, I suppose you could say that's when Maven Analytics as a company was born, because that's when it became more than just me. But from that point, when we think about the evolution up until the present day, there were two big opportunities that shaped who we became as a business, and I think how we set ourselves apart in the market. The first was the opportunity to create a better online learning experience for aspiring data professionals. And we pioneered this concept that we called guided learning, which was all about understanding our students' pain points and their professional goals, personalizing the experience based on those goals, guiding students every step of the way with expert support and coaching, and then empowering them for real world success, whether that's launching a career, landing a job, transitioning roles, whatever it might be. And those principles, that guided learning model, really shaped how we built our product and how we evolved as a business in that first phase. And that's why if you sign up on Maven Analytics, the first thing you do is take a survey that says, why are you here? Like, what can we help you achieve? And then we build a personalized learning plan that's targeted to help you accomplish your goals, right? It's why we built skills assessments to help our students identify their strengths and weaknesses and their skills gaps. And it's why we build all of our courses natively in-house from scratch with full-time instructors. Again, it's that commitment to providing a quality experience for our students, and more importantly, providing a level of support and mentorship and coaching that really is unmatched in the space.
Sure. And I want to make a clarification, first of all. Your product's great. I've been able to test it myself. And again, congratulations, because I was saying this to Bruno yesterday. I've been programming since the age of 12, 13, more or less. And most of the things that I had to do was going into YouTube, find a random guy, and follow a whole playlist of saying, hey, this is Python, for loops, while loops. Let's get into data structures, algorithms. And also I've been able to try like Udemy courses, Datacom courses, and I'm not saying that they're not good. They're really good. The problem is that I always felt like they were not as realistic as your product right now. Because you offer that guided learning that is so important, and have something that is valuable and personal to like the students that are trying to get this. Because once they signed up, as you were saying, first thing that I was surprised is I got my own plan. Right now I'm on the Power BI side of things. Really cool, by the way. And what was very interesting is I got to see that by the end of it, you guys empowered the students with their own project portfolios.
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful idea. Because the thing that actually landed me opportunities when I was interviewing for companies was that I took the time to create my own website and create my own portfolios, so that recruiters could be like, oh, this guy actually knows how to do things and can think like an analyst, which I think is something that not many people realize while doing courses.
Absolutely.
Also, something that I want to add, what Alfredo mentioned, I want to focus on your business model standpoint. I think your business model is incredible because it's filling up the necessity that people come to learn about data from different reasons, and it's a place that they can land up. Because all these different softwares that Alfredo was mentioning, all these different tools, is not like personalized. And the fact that it's personalized is what makes that experience a little bit more unique.
Absolutely.
And I think my case of learning about data is different from Alfredo's. I was a finance major before, but I understand the necessity of understanding analytics that give you a lot of opportunities in a lot of fields. And for me, also because of the fact being international, big data business analytics is part of a STEM major. That was also part of my decision. But when I get to the point is that the business model of focusing on how can personalize this experience make it a little bit less terrifying. And I think that's the key point of your product. It makes learning about data less terrifying.
That should be our new mission statement. I love it.
I think that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a big insight in the early days too. As we built this really big audience on Udemy and on LinkedIn Learning and lynda.com back in the day, we were gathering this type of insight from students and saying like, what would make a better learning experience? And what we realized was, it's a jungle out there when you're trying to learn these technical skills. And like, you go to these platforms that are like course factories, not to knock on any of these platforms, but like you go to some of these and you search Excel pivot tables and you get 10,000 course options return. And it's that feeling of analysis paralysis and like, I don't even know what first step to take. So like, I'm not even going to try, not to mention the challenge of like trying to piece together your own plan. Like Alfredo, you talked about watching a bunch of YouTube videos, like trying to create your own learning plan. And we hear that all the time where people are like, why would you pay for training? Like YouTube's free. I'm going to just learn on YouTube. And the fact is nothing is free. And if you've ever heard the phrase, there's no such thing as a free lunch, it's something I learned that stuck with me back in my economics courses, because there's always a cost, and the cost is your time, right? There may not be a monetary cost, but you are spending valuable time on every decision that you make. And when you waste your time trying to put together or cobble together some learning plan from 1,000 different videos or free resources, you're spending a lot of money and investing a lot of time, and still probably leaving yourself with huge gaps in your knowledge base. So I think that's a really important point. And I think, Bruno, you nailed it. Like that was a big insight that helped shape how we evolved and really launched as a learning platform.
And thanks again for commenting that. But based on this, what you said is, I want to ask you, now that we live on an era where everything's like growing so fast and we're seeing the introduction of like artificial intelligence, what do you see is going to be like the next trends on data e-learning? Because we're seeing like you guys have a really solid model, which is really focused, really customized, and I think it works beautifully. Like if I'm honest with you, if you guys would have launched this when I was like 12, 13, 14, I would have paid all the money in the world to have this. I'm not going to lie. Because at that point it was really difficult. But now that we see the introduction of many tools like ChatGPT or even OpenAI Art, which are like here to stay, where do you see the e-learning of data science or data analytics going to?
Yeah, really good question. I think just touching on your point about AI and ChatGPT, actually, I filmed a TikTok video about ChatGPT for Excel this morning. Check it out if you want. My stance, my philosophy on it is that there are parts of the analyst role that AI will likely replace, and there are parts that never will be. I think there are a lot of human components to being a great analyst. And again, it comes back to a lot of these soft skills: communication, strategic thinking, being able to anticipate the needs and incentives of your stakeholders and your users. A lot of that stuff I don't ever see being replaced anytime soon. As far as how the e-learning space in particular will change, I see AI and tools like ChatGPT becoming really, really valuable supplements and resources. I don't see anyone learning a new tool or building a skill at a deep level using only those tools. But I think there will always be a role for structured learning plans and packages like what we offer. But I do think that those tools and that AI technology is going to be playing a bigger and more helpful role as a resource for people who are on that learning journey. And, you know, as far as how we are continuing to set ourselves apart and evolve in this e-learning space, which has gotten very, very crowded, especially, you know, post-COVID, it kind of brings me to our second big kind of insight or opportunity, which is the opportunity to bridge the gap between classroom and career. And what I mean by that is, like, so many of these platforms out there are all about skills and they're all about tools, but we all know that skills alone don't get you the job, right? Like, to get the job, yeah, you need skills, but you also need to showcase those skills. You need a portfolio, you need a great resume, you need to be able to communicate, you need a network, you need to be prepped for the interview, you need a personal brand. Like, that stuff is all just as important, if not more, when it comes to like landing that job. But everyone's so focused on teaching the technical skills. So our second opportunity, which this is like in progress, like this is last year, it was our big focus as a business, was to evolve ourselves from Maven Analytics, the e-learning company, to Maven Analytics, the Data Career Launchpad. And that was a very deliberate rebrand. And it was about creating a purpose-built place where people can come to build their skills, to showcase their work, and to connect with peers, experts, even potential employers around the world, all in one place. Okay, so that was a big tipping point in our evolution as a brand and as a product. And it's when we introduced these new showcase tools, which are basically free tools where anyone can sign up and create their own profile and portfolio and share it with the world with just an email address. And we tailor-made these for aspiring data professionals. And, it's also why we started teaching more soft skill courses like thinking like an analyst and launching your data career. And it's why we're really excited about building this network that can help young analysts get their work out there and connect great talent with data opportunities out there too.
Chris, what's funny? One of the questions Alfredo and I, we want to ask you, like, what strategies you recommend to people? But now that you mentioned all this, I think the recommendation we have to give them is to follow your platform and everything that you have to show.
Absolutely.
Because you're covering every single part that is important in this field and to get a job. All that you discuss, Alfredo and I, we always have the conversations about the soft skills, about the business skills, about how to communicate what you understand about the dashboards. And Alfredo also, since we graduated, he had a lot of tools to how build a better resume, how to, all these, the project that he's doing in his own website. He already was doing all this. And listen, now that we listen that from yourself, I think that's awesome because we always have these conversations and we always focus on the same things. And now as a professional like you, with the platform that you have, mentioning that makes me feel that we are in the right mentality.
100%. And, it's interesting because we take a lot of pride in building tools and features based on real feedback. So not only our own experiences launching our own careers and the struggles that we went through, but actual user feedback. And that really drives the evolution of our product. And I think that's really important. And that's certainly what we've been hearing is that a lot of people are going through this online learning journey and then being left kind of hung out to dry, like where there's this big gap to actually get their foot in the door. And we're trying to fill that gap and do it in a place that's centralized and intuitive and really gives everyone the tools that they need, again, to launch that successful career.
Props to you. And we're happy that we got to interview you because we see that the three of us, we're on the education of data education. You guys can call it whatever you want. And I feel like everyone nowadays can have access to like a piece of the pie. Mm-hmm. And there's many ways to fulfill those requirements that people need to actually like launch their careers, whether it's through podcasts like this platform, your platform, which is given like not only the soft skills, but also the practical and more technical side of things. And I think that's great. We wish you the best of luck on your product. I'm really happy that I've tried and I'm super excited to keep digging on it because I feel like it's very interesting to see that would have been something perfect for me a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And I feel like now it's going to help me refine my skills, as a matter of fact. But
awesome.
Yeah, I agree totally with Alfredo. I think your platform is awesome. But before we finish, I'm going to ask you, if you never become a data analyst or created Maven Analytics, what you decided to be? What made you something related with art that you were mentioning?
No, it'd be Red Sox general manager.
General manager?
That would be it. Yep.
You're that passionate about baseball, huh?
I am, and fun fact, several classmates from that same sabermetrics course are now very, very successful front office execs in baseball, including the GM of the Rays. Yeah.
Wow.
So that course changed a lot of people's lives, myself included.
That's so cool to hear. I'm expecting that you've definitely like listened and watched Moneyball like 1,000.
Oh yeah. It's right behind me. I've got a stack of baseball statistical books. I love that stuff.
That's so cool.
Alfredo and I, like, I don't know, like 4 or 3 months ago, we went to see Red Sox against the Yankees.
Nice.
I have to mention this. All my people from Panama, they're huge Yankees fans because of Mariano Rivera. My father, he's a huge fan of it. But I am a Red Sox fan. This is what it is.
Okay.
And Alfredo and I were really excited when we were watching the game live, and we saw in the board, we saw Sox Science.
Nice.
Like all the analysis of how many, for example, how many yards the ball travel, how many meters the person have to run to catch the ball. You know, that for us, we were like kids in a candy store. That was awesome.
It's insane. That. It's insane what they can track these days. Like the movement of the pitch, how far defenders are moving to catch the ball. It's wild. It really is. It's like an analyst's playground. It's awesome.
Really? Well, just to wrap up things, Chris, thanks again for coming to the Analytics Experience podcast. We wish you the best at Maven Analytics on your journey, and hopefully you guys can keep impacting people's lives on their education and on their path to become data analysts, data scientists, and yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and for your kind words. And also, I think the main idea is a lot of people will get your words and will get really inspired to learn about this. And no doubt that with Maven Analytics is the path to follow. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you, guys. Had a lot of fun. Appreciate it.